I don't know what to call it, but it's called
Miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous. Well,
Things
the
didn't fit in any
genres.
other category.
Well, the genres are, vast here, but what I really wanted to talk about with all of you was about marketing and also about just influence in general, because we have some educators here as well, and people who honestly just really know how to reach an audience. And I've been very impressed with everyone's ability here to, fill those aspects. So my name is Hannah. Thank you all for coming to a Books Influence panel. Let's get into it. So first off, I'm going to have all of the authors introduce yourself and then talk about what you write.
Okay. I am Jillian Arly. This is my debut book. It just came out in June. I'm a hockey player writing hockey romance. So I combined my two favorite things in the world, and this is book 1 of 5. Book 2 goes to my editor on Tuesday.
Hi, I am SW Raine, and I write steampunk and urban fantasy. I mostly do action and adventure. I do not do romance. And I do lots of fan family, lots of banter. And I have book 2 of my urban fantasy is coming out at the end of December.
Officially, well, yeah, my writing name and my performing name as a pianist is Laurence E. MacDonald, but I'm Larry to everybody else. I've been writing books about film because it's a lifelong love of mine. I also write books about the musicians that compose the scores for films because I have a lasting admiration for what they do. As I sometimes say, they put the E into the motion and make it feel. This book is one that I really have been working on for quite a while. I'm not a fast writer. I mean, actually, you give me something to write, I can write it in a big hurry. I learned that from years as the music critic, for the Flint Journal. And when you see a concert on Saturday night and have to review it on Sunday morning, you don't have time to say, how am I going to write this? I learned from experience that you just start, put words on paper, and then if you think it's okay, you send it in. If not, then you redo it, or at least improve on it. I am a finicky editor of my own stuff. It's a lifelong problem I have. But at any rate, this is about all of the movies that won the Academy Award as Best Picture, starting in the first year of the Oscars, which began in 1927. Okay, at the time this was going into its final editing, I missed the last couple of years. Well, this has actually been out a year. So this is a book about the winners. Now, I have actually finished it, but except for the final edit of the book. If this is about the winners, I'm going to want about the losers. I know we've always gone, if we go to the movies very much, you can say, everybody said this is so good, but what was so good about it? Like I saw a movie last week that was 10 times better than this. And so when the Oscars are handed out, you may wonder, what the heck is that movie doing, winning all these awards? I surely felt that this last time. At any rate, what I mean by a loser is, and I use that word loosely, my official word for it is a snub. So the cover of the upcoming book, I have an image here of the Oscar statue. You see the Oscar statue here in the traditional, both arms folded. And in the new one arm is folded, the other one is pinching his nose. I thought that would be a cute way of saying, we've all seen movies that we thought were so good, but Oscar didn't like them. Or, if, more people vote for this, but don't vote for that. So, among the great losers, The Shawshank Redemption is one. Field of Dreams, if you're from Iowa, you love that movie. Hoosiers, if you're an Indiana person, you love Indiana basketball. So anyway, this will be coming out, and I've told a couple of people today that I expect the open book store up the street will have it in due time, okay? It's a lifelong passion of mine. And I know a lot of people would rather, read about fantastic stories, but actually the stories in the movies are pretty fantastic too. And sometimes you can learn things from them. When I was a kid, I learned about medieval England by seeing Ivanhoe. Big controversy about Richard the King is locked up in a prison, and his younger brother is hoping to keep him there so he can be the king. So that kind of historical thing, of course, there's a romance in it, naturally, and battles. But I learned about history. I also learned about character, about how a man can be left alone to face peril because nobody else seems to want to get involved. That was Gary Cooper playing in High Noon, which I saw when I was 11 years old. I might have liked it back then, but now I can say I more than like it. I think it's a terrific story, well told, in great big black and white, about a sheriff, or marshal actually, who has to live to survive. Okay.
I'm Wendy Day, and I write cozy fiction across several genres. I have a little ADHD, that's why, but I decided to frame it that way. So this is my newest book. It's a Pride and Prejudice retelling with dragons, and it's not even officially out until October 14th, but I have it here anyway, so I'm very excited about it. I love it.
Actually, will you keep that down there with you? Because I'll start with you then. Okay. So on the subject of Pride and Prejudice and dragons, that book was inspired by it. Can you talk about, without, I guess, giving too much to put the plot away, but what similarities there are, and also just what inspired you about Pride and Prejudice to emulate that in your own work?
So when I say Pride and Prejudice, I'm primarily talking about the 2005 movie, which a lot of Pride and Prejudice purists will be like, oh, well, I don't care. I love that movie. It's my favorite comfort movie. And I actually was taking my dog to the groomers and started thinking about dog grooming, mobile dog grooming businesses, and thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be funny if there was a mobile dragon groomer? And so I really want to write a book about a mobile dragon groomer, which is what I started with. And I don't know, I love that movie so much, and the way that it makes me feel is that it's very cozy and familiar, and I think in a world that's filled with so much turmoil, and we take on so much through media and things that is just heavy, I wanted to give something that was new and interesting, but familiar and comfortable, that people could kind of rest in. So that's kind of where the idea for Pride and Prejudice came from. I know there's a lot of other variations out there in books. I did have to make some changes. Her family does not live with her, but I made a little corresponding chart that said this character is this person, this character is this person, even if the nature of the relationship changed. She's got best friends, not a sister. So she does have sisters, but they're not in the book. And then one of the late additions I made is absolutely 100% a nod to Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is my recent complete obsession. And I added a talking cat to the book, and I love him. His name is Mr. Bennett. So, and he is a caracal, which is a very, a big cat that you would not normally have as a cat. Anyway, so that's kind of where it came from, was just this idea that I wanted to make this cozy, semi-familiar, but with a new, fresh take.
I love that. Oh, I can't do that. My next question is for Lawrence. Should I call you Lawrence or
Larry.
Larry? Okay. For Larry.
Okay.
So Larry here also has a bachelor in piano, and you were a music instructor.
Yes.
As well as a writer and artist. I would love to hear about how you see film and music affecting your students and what inspires them.
Well, let me go back to my childhood. My mother played the piano, and my mother loved to go to the movies. And my older brother was completely opposite to me. He could take an engine apart and put it back together in a day. I could write a sonata, sort of, in a day, and doodle it on the piano. So two opposites of the same family. They say my mother was kind of my inspiration. And yeah, in a way, she dragged me to the movies when I was about 7 years old. Because, first of all, my brother was into mechanical things. Movies didn't seem to be his thing. My dad liked to stay home and watch sports. So, now, I've already mentioned a couple of movies, but you know, I mentioned two movies that I saw by myself, both in the same year. 1952, Ivanhoe and High Noon. I got my spending money from mowing the lawn, tidying up the house, and various other summer chores. So with my pocket money, I could hop a bus, get downtown. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, on the west side, in the hilltop, 4 miles from downtown, too far to walk. I didn't really use the bike very much. I went by myself. I could get my own lunch at the Kresge's or Woolworth counter and see some first-rate films when they would first come out. Of course, I would also see them in the neighborhood theaters on the weekends, so I was averaging, I counted out one day, somewhere between 80 and 90 would be the number of movies I would see in a year, anywhere from about 1953 till I graduated high school 6 years later. And I saw pretty much everything that won awards. A few along the way, my mother might say, I don't think you should see From Here to Eternity, you know, it's a little sexy. Okay, so that one, that was the winner in 53. But I did catch up with it 6 years later when they were showing it on campus at my alma mater, Ohio State. I'm a Buckeye. Ironically, I've lived in Michigan most of my life, but you can take a Buckeye out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the Buckeye, I guess. Anyway, so when I did see it again, I marveled. Well, certain things impress me in a film. It can be just one actor doing something so special. And in that particular film, it was Montgomery Clift. He was the second lead. You had the sergeant played by Burt Lancaster, who was famously making out with Deborah Carr on the beach. She happens to be the wife of his boss. But they are having a very unhappy marriage, and he steps right in. James Jones was a good writer, but he threw in a lot of pretty adult stuff for those days, anyway. A few that really impressed me, besides High Noon, which stuck with me the next year, was Ellen Ladd playing the drifter that comes into the little community of farmers and battles against the cattle ranchers in Shane. So I could go on and on telling you about movies that really had an impact on me. But I mentioned earlier about Ivanhoe teaching me about medieval England, but you look around at the movies that were being made back then when they were going to extremes of width with cinemascope, and I'm interested, there was also a process called vista vision. Well, all of these kind of faded away, but lo and behold, yesterday I went to see a movie made in vista vision with Leo DiCaprio. I can't hardly recommend it unless you like to see goofy violence, but one battle after another, maybe a contender for awards for acting for this year. DiCaprio was almost always uniformly excellent, I think, although he got snubbed back in 2004 when he should have won for playing Howard Hughes in The Aviator. But as my new book coming out is going to tell you, it's not always the best films that win the awards. So I decided once I took the 95 films that are in here, about 1/3 of them are recommended by me at the end of each chapter, a separate chapter of each one, in chronological order, by the way. So it takes you through almost 100 years of filmmaking with focus on one film that did win the awards, and then mentioning at the end of each article a few that got snubbed. So the new one's going to have Shawshank Redemption, as I mentioned, Hoosiers, and lots of other really memorable films. 2 with Judy Garland that didn't win anything, Meet Me in St. Louis, and Stars Born especially. The 54 version. It's been made 4 times. This is the one time it should have won and didn't. All the other versions have won at least one award, including for song, which got Barbara Streisand an Oscar for her version, and Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga for the 2018 one. Okay, so my writing kind of brings together the world of film plus how music has played a great role in, I mean, just any John Williams score you can think of. I mean, wow, he did 2 or 3 of the Harry Potters, all of the Indiana Jones, all 9 of the Star Wars, even he was approaching 90 when he wrote the last one. So composers are very important to the overall way of film works. Is the music always good in films? No. My daughter and I were discussing this one with Spike Lee made recently with Denzel. The music is a little obtrusive. It seems a little heavy, but hey, we're all entitled to an opinion. Okay, so I've taught a lot of classes. I've tried to inspire students, first of all, not to jump to a conclusion about things. My way of approaching a film is, okay, so you see it once. You might not like it, but see it again. The second time is the time when you can finally begin to say, you know, I think this is something more than just what I thought before. If it has something to say, you can't get everything out of one viewing. You can be turned off. Now, maybe the Oscar from this last year is better than I think it is, but in Nora, I was offended by the subject matter. Now, if I could somehow just say, okay, so you know what it's like, but now watch it and see how they do it, because it won Oscars for writing, directing, acting, Best Picture. So who knows? Yeah. Some movies, if they're really good, I don't care how many times I watch Casablanca, and I've been telling that to people today, it doesn't get worse. Even if you know everything about it, every last line of dialogue, I still laugh, because even though it's a drama, it's a hoot. Every line that comes out of Claude Raine's mouth, he plays the corrupt police official who's pocketing money in his pocket as he's blowing the whistle, saying, we're shutting down because of illegal gambling. Okay, so movies have always been, it was an adventure as a child, but a learning experience. I hope to pass it on to others. And it's our opinion. So this is my opinion about which should have won, but I tell the story about the ones that did. And because it's in chronological order, you can walk through the various phases of filmmaking. Does every kind of film make awards, get awards? Horror, hardly ever. I don't know of a zombie film that's won. Silence of the Lambs is probably the closest thing. And also, one that got snubbed a few years ago was M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. It's hard to capitalize on just where he was going with that film, but anyway, he goes into the supernatural. And I think it's absolutely fascinating. So.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, SW Raine. I would love to hear about why you write steampunk and what you're working on right now, and what inspired you to write steampunk, I should say.
Well, I actually liked the steampunk aesthetic before I even knew there was a word for it. You know, you have top hats, you have the corsets, you have like the floofy skirts, lots of gears, lots of gadgets and all that stuff, and I was just taken by this fashion. And I then learned that there was a term for it, it's called steampunk, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's awesome. I play Middle Eastern drums, and my drum instructor, his wife, was opening up a steampunk bookstore in Farmington. It was called Off the Beaten Path. And I was like, wait, there's like books? So once I got, once she opened up the bookstore and, I got into the bookstore, I found out that, like, not just books, there's, like, movies, there's music, there's, like, everything. And I was like, oh my goodness. And the books really got me because I had always wanted to write. I had been writing for years prior to that. And I wrote mostly urban fantasy. Urban fantasy was my comfort blanket, just like magic in the real world. And I was all like, that's cool. But I was all like, I actually really want to write steampunk. I want to introduce this weird genre to a lot more people. So that is when I decided I was going to write steampunk. Right now, because I write in 2 different genres, I am currently finishing up book 2 of my urban fantasy trilogy. That's going to come out at the end of December, and I have already written book 2 of Rise of the Sky Pirate. I'm a bare bones drafter, so I write just the dialogue and the action, and then that's it. And then I have to set it aside for a very long time so that when I come back to it, I forget everything that happened. And then that way I can add the description, I can add the 5 senses, I can add the internalization and all that stuff. So once this one is done, I am editing book 2.
That's awesome. I heard that you learned that there was a whole, genre for
It was so
what you were
weird.
doing.
It was so weird.
That's awesome. All right, my question for Jillian is, so your series, the Green Bay Bobcat series, so only one is out right now,
Yes.
and the second is gonna come out
January 8th.
January? Okay. So you're obviously, in the world of hockey and sports romance with this. I think you told me that the day that Jessica Campbell was hired by the Seattle Krakens
Yes.
was, so she's the first female coach in the NHL, right?
Yep.
Okay, and that was the date that you started writing?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can you talk about, what that felt for you to see, also as like a former hockey player and coach too?
Yeah. So I actually grew up playing against Jessica in college. So watching her get hired as the first woman in the NHL ever was probably the coolest thing ever. Her best friend was on my college team. So the hockey world is huge, but it's also really small. And at this point, I was a stay-at-home mom. Both my kids are little. I didn't have anything for myself. I was kind of lost in the fog of motherhood. So seeing her get hired, I love romance, and I know it's not a genre everyone loves, but there's so much more going on than just a love story in these books. And I was sitting there and I'm like, there's not a book about a female coach that I can think of. And I used to read over 150 books a year, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do this for fun. She's changing the world. I'm inspired just to write this idea down, and that's when it started for me. And seeing her do that and seeing women in sports in the romance genre, it's something that's growing, and I can show my daughter and my son that these women are in these male-dominated fields, and they're just as good, if not better. And you can see that through my series a lot, female and men-dominated positions. And I think it's great for the book world, I think it's great for the real world, and I don't even know if I'm answering your question anymore. But yeah, so that's what happened.
Okay. So can you tell us about your book?
Yes, so my book, Behind the Bench, I mentioned I played, I also coached. There are some nods to Jessica in my book. If you Google her, you'll probably see her in her iconic white suit. Ellie rocks that. She's the second female ever coach in the NHL in this book. Because I didn't want to steal the thunder from Jessica. She gets hired, and the head coach is her childhood rival. They cannot stand each other. There's a lot of childhood trauma with Lincoln. He's the male character. In romance, there are mental health representations. There's the character growth. He has a lot of childhood trauma that is directly related to Lincoln and his abusive father. So they work through this trauma. They don't like each other at all. So it's enemies to lovers, slow burn, forbidden romance. They grow together, and yeah, it's fun and a little spicy, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds fun. So I would love to hear from all the authors, you can keep it, about how you market your books and what kind of impact that you hope to have on people.
Marketing is the most tiring part of this job as an author. No, I don't have a PA. A lot of my author friends have PAs who are running their social medias. I do everything myself right now. I just can't afford to do that. In this day and age, social media is the ticket. For the younger generations, which is my book, from 20s to 50s, or TikTok is the thing. It has changed authors' lives. If you read romance, Liz Tom 40, she's one of the hottest romance authors right now because she went viral on TikTok. It's so frustrating knowing that social media has that big of an impact. It's not always just your stories. It could just be one influencer talking about your book that changes your life. So yeah, it's a grind. You have to put in the grind, into the work. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of those, but then these in-person events are also huge, I think. I'm trying to get into every one I can, especially as a new debut author. I want people to walk by my table. I don't care if they like fantasy, they might have a friend who just sees this and is like, oh, my friend likes hockey romance. So yeah, I've gotten lucky. I've done really well on Instagram, and my TikTok is finally taking off. I actually was high enough in the Amazon rankings that I got an audiobook deal. So yeah, it is tiring though. And it's like, when I'm a slow writer, I'm marketing the same book for so long, there's only so many things you can do. So we're just trying to get as many eyes on our books as we can. And I forget the second part of your question.
What kind of impact do you hope to have on people?
For my books in general, I want little girls, not little girls to read it, right? But I want girls who may have struggled with the same thing as me as a female. I played with boys hockey, right? And I want them to see themselves in my books, see them through their struggles. In my book, this is one of 5. Book 3, I have a chronic illness rep because my sister has a chronic illness. And I can't say it enough, there's so much more to the romance genre than just the romance in the books. And I want people who might be underrepresented, who they might not have read a story about themselves before, to see them in my characters, even if it's not, you're not a hockey player, but you could see yourself in Ellie anyway.
SW Raine, same question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please. I have that ADHD thing, and I'm like, oh man.
So how do you market your books?
Gotcha.
And what impact do you hope to have on people?
Okay, so I do a lot. Oh my gosh. I do it all myself because I can't afford an assistant right now. But I started it small. One of those things where I need to do one thing at a time because my brain can only focus on one thing at a time. And once I get used to it, then it kind of becomes like autopilot, and then I can like move on to something else, learn that one, focus on that one becomes autopilot, and you keep going like that. So I started with Facebook, and I I just included Instagram at one point. After that I included Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I didn't quite make it to TikTok before I was all like, okay, no, 3 is a lot. And I was having a very hard time, even though I was marketing on each one of these, I was having a hard time getting likes, getting comments, getting anything. So I hired a social media manager. And even though she was able to help me with all of these. She is first and foremost an Instagram social media manager. So I kind of just like climbed really fast with like Instagram. And I found that no matter what I did with Twitter, it just wasn't working, and I was all like, all right, I'm done trying. I've tried for over a year and this isn't working, so I just kind of like, my account's still there, but I just said it's inactive now. If you want to come find me on Instagram. For Facebook, I haven't quite figured out how to make it work as good as Instagram, but because I started on Facebook, I'm not giving up on Facebook. As far as Instagram goes, I have been with my social media manager, and by social media manager, I don't mean she manages my social media. She actually coaches me in how to do the social media. She is a social media manager. I can hire her for that, but she basically told us that you need to know how to do it yourself, so when you do hire somebody, you can show them how to do it. Which totally makes sense, right? So I've been with her for years, and she's been, coaching me on how to do it. Now, marketing my books comes easier. I'm not tearing my hair out trying to find content on what to talk about. It was the personal branding part that I had a hard time with. Because I'm all like, okay, but I want you guys to buy my books, and you guys don't care about me. Oh, right, you guys don't need to know about me. But even though I tried to incorporate personal stuff, I don't know, there was something that just wasn't clicking in my brain. And it wasn't actually until last year that I finally figured it out. And it was like two pieces of a puzzle, just like, wow, oh my goodness, you mean like it's this easy? So now I, manage that. I love marketing on Instagram, I love it. Still not entirely too sure what's going on Facebook, but again, I'm not giving up on Facebook. I do newsletter marketing, I do live event marketing. I find that I sell most of my books at live events. And I always thought I was an introvert, but apparently I'm what is called a omnivert, where I can, I'm not a mix of both, that's ambivert. I go from one extreme to the other. And it's at events that I become an extrovert, because it's no longer about me, it's about my books. It's about characters, it's about, I don't know, genres, talking about like whatever. Like his movies, I'm like, oh my goodness, I knew exactly what movie he was talking about when he mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio. I was like, wait, I know that one. So just like connecting with people, that's why in-person events is my best form of marketing, because I get to connect with people. And going back to the second question, which was, I'm sorry.
What kind of impact?
Yes, there we go. What kind of impact? I knew my answer, I just couldn't remember the question. But going back to the personal branding, it was my book coach. She's no longer my book coach, but she's a good friend. She was the one who said, because I couldn't figure out personal branding. And she said, okay, she goes, when you read a book, what sticks with you when you read a book? When you listen to a song, what sticks with you when you listen to a song? When you watch a movie or a TV show, what sticks with you that hours later you're still thinking about it? I said, the characters. The characters are always my favorite. In books, in TV shows, in movies. And I figured that that's the kind of thing that I want people who visit my Instagram page or Facebook page or coming to live events, that's what I want them to know about me, is that I want them to know that I love characters. I love the found family aspect. I love anti-heroes. I love villains. Oh my gosh, I love villains so much. So I started incorporating a bit of that into my personal branding. So I have a little bit of mischief because I like those tricksters, I like those villains, and I have a little bit of magic. But it's the characters. That's my favorite part.
Awesome. Beautiful. I love villains too.
Oh, I love villains.
Villains are great. Lawrence? Larry?
Yes.
How do you like to market your books?
I have to do a little background here. My career as a teacher led me in a lot of different directions, but writing was not one of them. Actually, none. I wrote a lot of assignments, you name it, for a music class that I was trying to teach them a lot about the composers and the ways music is put together. And so I did a lot of writing. And then I got to write these reviews for the journal. It wasn't until I was just almost to the cusp of retirement that I really finally got around to saying, okay, it's time for me to write a book about the composers. I had wanted to do it a lot sooner, but things kept getting in the way. I even did a radio show for 20 years on WFBE, the now defunct public radio station that was affiliated with the Flint Board of Education. That's how the WFF, Flint BE, Board of Ed, got its call letters. Anyway, so when I got this first book together, I actually was lucky because I got a publisher interested in it through a fluke, because I received a notification about a new book coming in, which teachers often get on their mailbox. And at the bottom of the card, it said, if you know if someone is writing something, let us know about it. And so I said, well, I've got something that I started on a sabbatical like 10 years before. So I pulled it out of the drawer. And that was the, you can see a copy of it on the table out there, called The Invisible Art of Film Music. And of all my books that basically did pretty well, I even got it into a book club. You know, we used to have these things in the mail, you know, and it was advertised. Oh boy. I wish I could say the same thing about the second edition of the book, but in the meantime, the publisher of the first book sold out to another company, and then it wound up in the hands of a company that I have very mixed feelings about, just because Roman and Littlefield, which is a big, I guess I would say, specialist kind of thing. You want to find a book on the history of zombie movies, I think they've got one. It's not my cup of tea. At any rate, they are good at marketing, and so I went all these years thinking that, well, I don't have to worry about that, do I? But then I got another book out, which I co-authored at the request of the editor of my previous book, a guy in England who wanted to do, there was a series of the 100 best this and 100 best that. And I also have a copy of that out there, which I may be able to say is still available. It came out in 2018, but it didn't sell. And I thought, well, people would really love this. The greatest film scores of all time. But I'm finding out what a very specializing kind of thing I'm into. So I have to say, oh, I'm not in this to make money. But at my age, you know, I'm on retirement, pension and all that. Yeah, I'd like to make a few bucks. Looks like today I'm going to be about $32 in the hole for selling like 2 books in my little corner over here. Anyway, well, with this book, I've had very mixed results, actually pretty negative. I decided, okay, I can't get anybody else interested in publishing this, so I got to self-publish. So it seems like I've gone backwards. And the result is a book which is okay, but they lied to me and said, oh, I'm going to index this for you. And so, is there anything mixed in the book? No. You shouldn't have a book like this without an index. Come on. It's nonfiction. So this one is a year in, and it's not doing well at all. I took a copy with me to the Turner Classic Film Festival. Now, they have a book signing thing. I met Leonard Maltin. He's a noted writer on films. He said, I've got a new book. He said, well, good luck, kid. And so now I've got another publisher, and I am paying a little more money this time, but I am supposed to get some marketing, so I will wait and see if this one does better than this, which is sadly, just kind of an obscure thing. I guess I thought maybe more people in the world are interested about history. But I'm finding out that that's not a subject that kids pay much attention to. If we knew more about history, we wouldn't be in the mess that we are in now. We would know that the United States was founded by people who had a very keen interest in seeing that we aren't going to make the same mistakes that they do in England and France and Germany and Russia. But, oh well, back to the subject. I want to market this. I'm terrible at computering. I'm 84 years old. I bought my first computer when I was 50, going on 51. I have never been active in doing Instagram. I am interested in Facebook, but I need help. Okay, so the guys that are helping me get Oscar snubs underway, we're just in the final editing of it. But I'm going to be most interested in how they can help me set up a Facebook account. I can do Facebook a little bit, but I've got a lot of nieces that are, and I've got a grandson and granddaughter of, step-grandma. They know a lot more about computing than I do, so when I have a technical problem, they can fix it. Just like that, boom. So it remains to be seen if I can reach a wider public, but I would love to share my lifelong history with film with you. It was a learning thing for me as a kid. I got this crazy idea once. I went into an almanac. It says best pictures year by year. And I said, okay, I'll see them all. Guess what? They showed them on TV. They had them on Saturday evenings. And then there was the late show. After the weather at 11:25, I saw Rebecca, 1940s winner. And I'm in high school now. And I have 8 o'clock class. I gotta get on a bus at 7. The Best Years of Our Lives came on, the William Wilder classic from 1946. Let's see, it's 3 hours long, so figure it out. If it starts at 11:30, I get about 4 hours of sleep. But this was me in the 50s.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, as marketing, I suck. But I hope you get better.
Wendy, how do you market your books?
So I think the key to marketing is finding your audience. And I've had to learn along the way, and each book has been different. I think what I've learned, you can write to market. I'm not very good at writing to market. If I wrote smut, I'd make a lot of money probably, but I don't. I don't have anything against it. I just don't want to write it. So like for this book, it has been a challenge because it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling with dragons. Now, if you are a Pride and Prejudice purist who likes the 1986 thing or whatever, you're gonna be like, you're gonna have opinions on that, right? And so I think it really is just finding your audience. And the way that you do that, the way that I've learned to do that is the books that do best are the ones that have a very clear genre. I know what it is, and it has a super easy hook. Like my first book I have over 2 million pages on Kindle Unlimited read of this book about Golden Girls meets Thelma and Louise. And that's what sells the book like all day long. And it has a really good blurb. So, and this one is Pride and Prejudice with Dragons. Now, once I find my audience who isn't expecting like a Fourth Wing kind of book, nobody gets killed, nobody has sex in the book. So once I find the people that aren't expecting that to happen, I think we'll be good. But you have to have a good cover, you have to have a good blurb, you have to have a good hook. And the hook isn't like a sellout or anything. I just have a couple books that are my heart, but I can't tell you what they're about. It's too complicated. I mean, that's not good, like when you're trying to explain it. And then I think once you figure that out, you have to be able to, in your Amazon marketing, pick the right categories. And I use a thing called Publisher Rocket. So you pick the right categories and you make sure that it is getting through to the right people is like crucial. But I spent a couple years listening to every podcast I could get my hands on, reading the books, learning how to write a book, listening to marketing. I'm actually no good at like the newsletter stuff. I should be, but I'm like, oh, I need an assistant. I don't have one. Anyway, so that's it. You just have to have a really good, a good book, a good hook, a good cover, and a good blurb.
Your website is great too.
Thank you. I did that on GoDaddy.
It's very, very good.
But when did I update it? Probably like a year ago. I need to do that again. So it's like coming soon, a book I'm not gonna do anytime soon. That's good. Anyway, but yeah, so that's it. That's it. I'm a work in progress. I tend to make things way too complicated.
Oh, sorry, that's okay.
And then I can't do it. I don't do it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have time for today on the Books Influence panel. Thank you all so much for coming. I think we have like 10 minutes left in the event, so if you want to go buy some books before we end at 4, go run.